Tell me, when you look out of the window, what do you see? It's nothing like it used to be. Mankind got too lazy.
From one world to the
Or is
next.
it?
My body would shimmer in the firelight as they tried to contact the spirit
Frozen in
world.
place.
Frozen. Cast and hold. Types of fossils to behold. Ancient.
Mother passed the door.
Excited but nervous. I'd never been to a museum.
I ran further and further, seeking it. One of his clouds. His name was Fire.
Okay, so you want to kind of come nearer me? No, really nearer. I mean, how many of you have been to the museum before? Just two of you. Excellent. Good. Well, welcome.
I looked up and I see this massive dinosaur, and I was just like a little smile on my face all the way down. I was like, oh, this is a museum.
I think museums are good places as starting points for writing exercises, because poetry itself is a commerce with history, a kind of engagement with time, and a museum is probably the ideal place because there are objects here from thousands of years ago, and in a sense that's perfect material for really inspiring the imagination to really engage with the world, engage with human endeavour.
The Thresholds project would be a chance for young people to connect with one of the museums in Cambridge, to help some of the young kids connect with poetry and to have an opportunity to meet one of the top poets in the UK, and also to develop their own skills in poetry. And Matthew has really allowed the students to, I think, connect with modern poetry. I think he's made it real because he's a real life poet who does it full time, and they really respected that about him. There's no way that you can talk to Browning or you can talk to Shakespeare, and so the fact that you can talk to someone who's able to connect with them, I think, is really, really powerful.
I've been working with the Manor School, who've just come in and had a lovely workshop, terrific students, and that was an extraordinary experience. And often in these things they can be the most powerful experiences of all, actually, because they're the ones that remind you that poetry is of the community and for the community, and it doesn't just belong in books and it doesn't belong in libraries, but it's spoken word and it's speech, and it's the conveying of stories, really, the storytelling in the most memorable way, and that was really effective today. And some of the stories that came out were totally thrilling, I thought. One of the things we did today was talk about the ways in which objects can be opportunities to tell stories, and even the most distant historic distance or physical distance, or the things that seem to lack animation, actually can carry the most terrific personal stories.
I'm gonna write about the amethyst crystals. I chose it because I like the colors, and yeah, it's my favorite colors, and purple and grey go well together.
Gemstones emerge from volcanic eruptions, and volcanic eruptions are always pretty dark, and the ashes and everything, they're really dark and ugly and dirty. But from those eruptions you find gems, the most beautiful stuff in this world. And I think that's something amazing. It's always like I'm trying to connect it with like life and people, that it's really hard to find good people in this world, and they might be with everyone and within people, and you'll find them in crowds, but there are some gems in this world, and you just have to search them. So that was like my idea.
And any one of the things held here, there's an opportunity for me to find a way in it, if I can find a way in. The trick actually is about not being overwhelmed, because one object is enough if you're lucky. One story is enough, one moment is enough, one intersection, and that's often the ways in which poems spark off. Earth woke you at an unshook rib. We had no books to base you on. We had no tools to pare you down. So incomplete, you were both catalogue and kit, the takings of a varied ground. Carpals from the marl pits, grasses grown through a jaw bone, all bones became your bones. We laid fibula to femur, radius to humerus, one hip cropped from female, one of male. Our ivory, uncommon kid, from such modesty you stood. Light wounded, wind wounded, water slipped from your sternum. You pined for the forest floor, you pined for your own kind, but there were no kinds like yours, so bit part, out of epoch, mocked by those from nearer shore. We took them on and knocked them down, damned if they cast pity on your name, and wondered what kind of kindness this could be, to leave you where you could be left, unwarranted to all but us, circling your roof of fire and straw. Night moves at the welter pools. The summer slips, the winter hoars. 11 times the long hand crosses short. We go so far. One day the rings will slip from our fingers, but not from yours. Everything we almost are, we lose. My animal, you cannot know how hard in love you are.
You see what she set up? We thought it was going to be some hope out the window, and then she subverted our expectation. That's what good writers do, don't they? You play little games with your reader, don't you?
It was really interesting. We came with school, like maybe 9 of us, and had a workshop with Daljit, one of the poets, and it was just like really interesting and just great, like creative writing, and like lovely to see all the artefacts.
Sarah Jane, who works in the museum here, showed the students some of the objects in the museum, and also she pulled out some objects in the back room, and they could actually pick the objects up and touch them and get a good sense of them and their historic gravity and weight. And then I set some writing exercise using the objects, and they all had a go at writing a poem. And then we did, a little kind of exercise on techniques and crafts of writing. So I was helping them cross thresholds in their writing. It was really good because they were really lovely, enthusiastic, bright students. So it was a very easy, fun 2 hours.
I've always deemed very useful to look outside of literature in order to get to draw inspiration. So I think this is a lovely opportunity to look at objects that are not in particular related to poetry, and to try to use them and put them into poems.
It was a great chance to actually, have someone who works at the museum explain what the different artefacts were and get a proper knowledge of the history behind them.
They're not just dead objects, they're things that people have used, so they've all got a human story, so that's what makes them interesting and useful for writing.
We've always had people coming in to use our collections in creative ways. Over on the other side of the gallery we've got a coffin that was on display in the museum in the 1950s that Sylvia Plath wrote a poem about. So we've had this long relationship between words and our objects going back generations and years, so it's exciting to continue that.
My view of museum has massively changed because it was, for me, I like history, so museum was never boring for me, but it was not something where I could associate with it, with writing, because writing and history is like two different things. I always felt that, but now I know that yes, I can write anywhere I go and I can write about anything. I just have to know about the stuff, and I just have to get in depth with the stuff, connect myself with the stuff just if I have to write it.
I've never really went to a museum before, so it's like the first time, and because I've went there twice now, it's like, right, I have to go again, and I'm getting more excited, and I just really want to learn more about the fossils.
Our views of museums changed a lot, I think, because it's more interesting, the further you look.
I go to college kind of 5 minutes away, but I've never been here before, which is crazy when there are so many sort of museums and things in Cambridge, and there are such interesting things right on your doorstep that you wouldn't come and see them more and use them.
I met him by the lake, the fish swimming past, their scales gleaming in the sun, the water so peaceful, ever still, like a statue made of gold. I heard a twig snap, its sound sharp and harsh. That was when I saw him, the small fox. His fur was soft, silky, and he became my friend. His name was Scarlet, and he had a fiery-coloured coat. He gave me his paw, curiously sniffed my face, and climbed onto my arm. His tail was like a feather duster, with no dust or dirt. It tickled me. I felt something soft, with a wet nose clinging on his tail. It was one of his cubs. His name was Fire.
Goal as a writer was just to have fun, for everybody to have fun, to use the house, not to be intimidated by art, and this is probably the least intimidating art gallery that I've ever been in anywhere in the world. I was asked by Helen Taylor, who's been organising the Thresholds project, to pick a museum in Cambridge that I'd really like to work in. So that was the first. The first involvement was actually choosing the museum, and I picked Kettle's Yard as my first choice. Then I got my first choice, and apparently all 10 poets got either the first or second choice, so everybody wanted to work in different places, which is quite fascinating.
It's really, because you go to all these museums and they've got all their lovely artefacts, but they're all behind glass, and here it's such a sort of interactive environment, and you're surrounded by all this stuff, and you can sit there, and it's really nice. And there's just, you feel like you're in someone's home, and it's really good for writing.
Being a writer isn't a job, it's a vocation. And something like this gives young people the opportunity to see the vocation in it, to see that it's about desire and passion and belief and energy and intellect and imagination, and it's about the unconscious mind as much as it is about the conscious mind, and all of these things come together and allow people a chance to just have to just step on that path and to actually say, yes, I can. You know, it's possible. And I think when I wrote as a kid, I used to think, can I do this? Am I allowed to do this? You know, how dare I write a poem? You know, there'd be this little voice inside my head that was telling me that I wasn't allowed to do it. Probably very Scottish, but I like the idea that young people come here and they actually can see that this is a path that you can actually choose to take. You can step on it, and off you go.
It just feels like a release. You know, it's quite satisfying to project the way you think onto paper. And it just illustrates it a lot better than I could if I tried to like draw it or describe it with my voice. I'm not a very good talker, so writing is probably the best thing in creative writing. It's not expressing how I feel in black and white either. You know, it's using something else to portray it.
The way that they're using the art and the words together is fascinating. It's been great working with Felipe and seeing how she works.
I loved working with Jackie, I think, because just to have someone who's so accomplished and knows what they're doing is really nice.
She's quite famous, and we get to work with a famous person. That's always good. You know, you feel special if you work with someone famous.
I've enjoyed that a lot. They've been really friendly and really helpful, and just generally really encouraging to be creative, and that's always really good.
It's almost like they're a peer, you know. When they talk to us about our work, you know, it's not so much do this as much as it is sort of developing our ideas together, which is really cool. And I've really enjoyed having that kind of input, but from a professional kind of standpoint.
This has been a really exciting opportunity, just because it's really nice to work with other people who have the same interests as you, and working in a space like this, like a proper art gallery. It's so nice.
I think what's really essential for anybody, any age, to feel their work is valued is to have it viewed by an audience. And I think the process of curating your work, choosing what do you want to show and why.
I don't usually share my work with other people. I don't think my work's usually very good, but everyone said that I've done really well.
It's essential that young people are given the chance to experience a generous environment where the work, the creativity that people have invested in is being valued. It's essential that they can feel that they are also a part of that.
I really enjoyed just looking at the amazing artifacts here and like just the free writing, but tonight this event, like reading to lots of people and listening to other people's work, was really great.
Today we have a work in progress event. It's called Step Inside. So 3 of the poets, Anne Gray, Joe Shapcott and Daljit Nagra, are going to read a little bit from their own work and talk a bit about their experience so far. We have some of the young people who've taken part in the project who are here this evening as well. And it's a chance really to mark, partway along the project. Not all the poems are written by the poets yet, but it's a way to sort of pause and reflect and to have an event during the Science Festival just to celebrate the project so far.
Yeah, I think it was lovely, in particular because some of the people that I get the opportunity to be inspired about this poem were in the audience, and I could notice their chuckles on the particular lines. But also, it's lovely to share poetry. I think that's what poetry is for.
As members of the audience, we've been invited into the heart of these museums, the heart of the collections. The staff has been open, generous, kind, and we've been able to participate in the making of poetry, as well as recipients for the reading of poetry. These kinds of things, for the last 3 months, I've seen the 10 greatest poets in the UK at this moment. With very, very little effort on my part, they've come to us. And I hope that somehow the Thresholds Project will develop and go on in different disciplines and will continue to be a permanent element between the museums.
Our school is very committed to poetry. We have young children at school up to the age of 13. So it's just fabulous to find a project that's actually really recognising the importance of poetry in the lives of young people. It's about finding your voice, which is true obviously with just the linguistic sense in poetry, but it's also about knowing and discovering who you are and particularly who you can be and the range of things you can be.
The best thing for the children is that it's allowing them to see that poetry is a real living thing that is out there in the world, and the poets are not just words on the paper with a name at the bottom. They are real people who do care about the way in which they share their thoughts and their love of language, and it really inspires the children to want to emulate that.
Each object has stimulated stories and poems from these students that they never even knew were inside them. And they were so galvanized that after every single poem, they cheered and clapped with great enthusiasm. Normally, everyone's rather erudite and silent in between poems and the readings. Not these students. They just loved it. They rocked and rolled. So I would say that this project has turned on students, and that is very, very heartwarming.
One of the things that I learned from poetry more than anything else was that it gave me confidence to put one word after another, and to be able to speak and to have that confidence is one of the things that writing can teach you.
Museums definitely seem more tangible as something you could start a piece with, and it's really opened my eyes.
My view of poetry has changed because before I didn't think I could find inspiration in old rocks and skeletons, but now I can, I think.
I never knew that we could write poetry upon without rhyming, and then I never knew about I could write poetry upon rocks, fossils or gemstones or anything like that. Before I started it was how am I going to do poetry in the museum? And then now I'm okay, I did it, it's fine, it's easy, and you just have to have an eye for doing the stuff.
I reflect the past, look into my depths and find generations of culture and vanity. I once laid upon a woman's table, amongst other objects of beauty, perched on the side, longing to be looked at, with my etched bronze surface, hairstyles matching my swirls. I saw years of primping and pruning, mother passed to daughter, but they were always and forever changing.
Would I change? Maybe somehow.
That's actually kind of hard because I pretty much enjoyed everything we've done so far.
Well, the project is so perfect, I would never like to change anything about it. But if I would change anything, then it would be like, maybe, I don't actually know, more often visits maybe, or something like that.
Make it a little bit longer, because 2 hours isn't really a long time for us to get to know you lot, and also get to actually properly walk around the museum and have a look at everything. 2 hours for like 2 or 3 days isn't very long.
I'd say longer as well, because it was really good.
I think the amount of time that she got to work on the poems, I think if that was longer, then it would be much better.
You'd have to make it longer. It wasn't long enough.
Yeah, it really wasn't long enough because we didn't have enough time to work on it here.
Have days here instead of just a couple of hours.
On the school side of things, it's been difficult to get the kids all together to be seeing how their poetry is developing. It would have been great to have some time out with the kids, and that's just been kind of difficult to organise. But look, apart from that, it's been so great. I think it's been the amount of time has been fairly good, as in the kids haven't got bored. There's been lots of, it's been kind of 2 hours, which is enough for them to focus. If it could somehow happen over a slightly longer time span, I think that would be great. But it's been organised really well, run really professionally, and it's been so great to have the financial support as far as being able to provide taxis so that we didn't have to have kids, being transported and that kind of stuff. That's been excellent. Getting their special books was a really lovely touch, for them to have something to take home.
The best thing was when we could just go and explore on our own, just go look at loads of different things without having to do a certain thing, just look at everything.
The best thing about this project was the freedom. We were given the freedom to go in the museum, look at all the objects, think about them, and just think what we want to do. It was whatever we want to do, we can do it. And that's why we could write poetry better.
I found that I actually like museums, and I would go there on a day out.
For all the young people here tonight, you are engaged in an extraordinarily powerful reinvention of yourself through this experience with the poets that you've had. And it may be the threshold 10 now, but we might be in the presence of the threshold 30, 40, 50 who are out in the audience tonight. So that makes the university exceptionally excited.
It was a fun experience that I've never done before.
It's a lot more awesome and amazing than you think it is. Absolutely awesome.
I hope that they go away remembering that they can do it. I hope they go away inspired to create more, to write more poems, to create more art works. And I hope that when they look back on it in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, it'll be something that they still remember and that they think, gosh, that was an exciting time to do that. But by that stage, they'll have done an awful lot more, that it will be maybe the beginning of a path for them, the beginning of an artistic path.